Welcome back to Breakfast with Bob from Triathlon Business International. We are up on raceplace.com, endurancesportswire.com, and raceplace.com. Our next guest, the president of Universal Sports, Mr. Scott Brown. Scott, thanks so much for taking time.
My pleasure. Thank you.
We were talking a little TV earlier, and talk a little bit about the importance for endurance sports, for running, triathlon, cycling, television and good television to drive more people to our sports.
I think that the strength of endurance sports is the passion of the participants in those sports.
Yeah.
And to be able to tap into that and harness it by doing a good job showing those sports and telling those stories on television, that's certainly our challenge.
Right.
And it's a fertile field, really, because of the passion there to work in and to hopefully deliver the type of content and information too that those participants and those athletes are interested in. So we're excited to be in the space. We think it's a great time to be in endurance sports and to reach an audience that's different from sort of the mainstream or the traditional, but it also includes mainstream and traditional as well. So it's not so niche that that's all it is. So we're tapping into that whole thing.
We see so many networks that are really, they have one pivot point. It's Golf Channel, it's NBA, it's MLB, it's National Football League, it's hockey. For you guys, you have an umbrella called Universal Sports, and underneath that umbrella, you have swimming, you have cycling, you have running, you have obstacle, you have all sorts of things.
Right.
Is that difficult when you're trying to pitch sponsors? You're trying to pitch advertisers, that it isn't so vertical.
It can be, but I think once we kind of dispel those initial qualms that people have, it ends up being a strength. We cover over 40 different sports on the network.
Right.
And ranging really in three main categories. We do Olympic sports, we do endurance sports, and we do action sports. And there's some crossover between those three main categories, but we found that by being something that's a little different from everybody else that's out there, and by having such a diverse offering, that we're speaking to fans that are passionate about key sports, but we're also introducing them to other sports that can kindle additional passions for them. So these are people that enjoy sports very much, and so they're people that we can really count on, I think, to embrace additional sports and to become fans of that also.
What's interesting to me is when I was running Competitor magazine, to me the whole was better than the parts. We had running, triathlon, cycling, mountain biking, but you wanted to cover all of them, and you wanted to give people an opportunity to learn more about all those. Do you find that you're talking to swimmers when you're showing a swimming championship, and when but you're also covering triathlon? Is there a feeling that, hey, we should be doing some, hey, swimmers, if you learn to ride a bike or run, you could get in the triathlon? Is that something that becomes, when you're showing swimming coverage, trying to reach out to those swimmers to get them to learn about another sport?
We haven't done that actively. It's been more of an organic process where people have kind of found that on their own, but we're certainly seeing mobilization of those sorts of fans where they're kind of stepping outside of the familiar and the known, and embracing additional sports, but both to follow as fans, but then also to do as participants. And that's, I think, something that we found that's been really interesting about our viewers, is that it's very much a lean forward, lean in participant fan base. It's not kind of the passive couch potato sort of experience. So these are people that are doers. They want to get out there and try things, and so I think they definitely embrace the new.
When you look back 10, 15 years, people who were runners just ran. and people who worked out in the gym just worked out in the gym. Nowadays, your typical person, who's probably your typical viewer, might run a 5K one weekend, do a Grand Fondo the following weekend, do a triathlon, and do a obstacle event the following weekend. I don't think brand themselves as runners or triathletes or endurance people.
That's right.
They're universal sports people.
Absolutely.
They're your folks. And how do you reach out and get people to come and watch universal sports? Is it?
We do it a couple different ways.
Okay.
Certainly, for us, the most basic is at the events themselves.
Yes.
The participants. I mean, that's the the people most likely to embrace something that's a little bit different. Not mainstream. It's familiar to them.
Right.
And I think they also enjoy that being different. That they're not
Exactly.
they're not Me Too followers. That they found something that really resonates for them. And so by fishing where the fish are, basically going to those events and activating people at competitions. Particularly in the early days of the network was critical for us. We've gotten to a size and scale now where we sort of have critical mass, and we don't have to do that quite as much, but we've never abandoned it. It's something that's always been important to us and to our fans to have that kind of personal connection there.
This year at Boston, you did extensive coverage, a lot more than you would do for most normal events.
Yes.
And that led me to, one of the most successful things I've seen with HBO and some of the other guys are these 24/7 where they go and they follow athletes leading into. And when I was watching what you did with Boston, that was my first thought. It's like, this is setting up for doing 3 or 4 part series leading into getting, the battle at Boston or whatever it happens to be. Is that something down the line Universal might get into?
We have toyed with that concept, definitely, even specifically in the context of Boston. It's funny that you should mention that. I think, again, because so many of our fans are doers and participants, if we could give some of the background kind of leading up to that, how do people train, what are some of the stories that they live through as they prepare for something like that, that I think it would be interesting to watch, and also something that, again, that our active participant fan base could actually learn from and apply and incorporate into their own training and preparation for the events that they do. So absolutely, I think there's a lot of potential there.
When I look at the Ironman coverage on NBC, the human interest part, and when you talk to people what got them into the sport, it was Julie Moss and Kathleen McCartney, it was Dick and Rick Hoyt, it was Rudy Garcia-Tolson. It's the human interest stories led
for
to
sure.
That is that something as with Universal Sports? Because those, obviously, then you get more cost involved than just covering the event from the start to the finish. It's plugging in some of the up close and personals, but I think it helps takes the sport to another level. Is that something in the plans?
Absolutely. It's something that we're trying to do now and we want to do more of. I think storytelling is very important.
Yes.
I think it can't just be showing the event and letting it speak for itself, although sometimes that's important. You want to let the event breathe, and you don't want to over manipulate it. But other times call for other things, and I think kind of providing that background, the human interest, giving, letting people understand who the athletes are, so that they connect with them, they have a rooting interest in them, and that they have somebody to cheer for, and reasons to cheer for them is critical, I think, to rounding out the whole television experience and growing interest in the sports.
Is there a sport that's the most watched on Universal Sports? Is there one event that gets more viewership than any other, or does that be like Tour de France or something like that?
Cycling is certainly a very big discipline for us. That's we spend a lot of hours devoted to the sport of cycling, and we have very passionate fans there. I mean, it's difficult. It's almost like picking your favorite child. But and I don't know if there's any one sport that really dominates. Certainly, no one sport that has the
in terms
majority
of bigger numbers or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, again, covering over 40 different sports, it's we tend to have a pretty diverse mix of things that really drive interest. The one thing that we're really looking forward to this year in particular is rugby.
Yes.
Because with the Rugby World Cup coming up in this fall from England, it'd be only the second time that event has been shown on television in the United States.
Oh, wow.
We showed it for the first time in
Yes.
2011 from
Yep.
New Zealand. It's, depending on who you talk to, either anywhere between the third and the seventh most watched sporting event in the world. So there's a lot of potential there to do a lot more with that sport here in the United States than we historically have, and we're excited about it. The time zone's going to be great for us. We're hoping that the USA Eagles will have a good run.
Yes.
And go deep in the tournament, at least get out of the group stage, and that'll help a lot. But rugby is the fastest growing team sport in America right now.
Yes.
So we're optimistic that we can sort of harness some of that energy and leverage that with the Rugby World Cup and do a lot with that sport.
I remember back, what really helped put ESPN on the map back in the day was America's Cup, when they covered the sailing. And it was a remote sport, and people were like, but everybody was transfixed because of the way it was covered.
Right.
With rugby, obviously that's a good TV sport already. Do you look at that under a microscope and say, okay, this is an opportunity, it's a team sport, this is a little different than what we normally do. What can we do to make this different?
Definitely. To make it different, and also to reach basically two separate groups of fans. We have the people that already understand rugby, that are
Yes.
already fans, and we don't want to
you don't want to upset
patronize
them.
them,
Right, yes.
and sort of dumb it down too much. We also know that there's a lot of people out there that don't know really
Me.
anything about rugby.
Nothing, absolutely.
So how do you make it accessible for them? How do you teach them the basics of the game so
Yes.
that they can watch a Rugby
That's a really
World
good
Cup
point.
match and enjoy it?
Yeah.
And there's a reason why so many people watch the sport outside of the United States. So how do we kind of educate the American sports fan enough
Yes.
so that they can watch it, understand it, and enjoy it the way that people outside of the United States do?
When I look back at just the way soccer has become so much more popular on television.
Absolutely.
ESPN never used to cover soccer.
Right.
Now, top 10, it seems like there's always
No, they
soccer.
looked at it with suspicion. It was a joke.
It was a joke. Yeah, they wanted nothing to do with it.
un-American.
Right. But then I think they realized, I mean, it's the most popular sport in the world.
Right.
We better get involved. And part of that was showcasing it. You showcase it to the American public. You put it in SportsCenter. It's important to us. It should be important to you.
Right.
And that sounds like
Clearly, I think exposure is critical, particularly when you have a high-quality product
Yes.
like that. And then the other thing that I think is significant, or will be significant for rugby, and again,
Yes.
just to kind of extend your analogy there to soccer. So it was exposure, but it was also success on the field.
Exactly,
So I think
yes.
when we saw the World Cup in
When the
Brazil,
American-
for the American team, men's national team, to get out of the group of death, which nobody thought they were going to do, to play well, and we like following winners in this country.
We do.
And we don't have a lot of patience for those that do not win.
Exactly.
So I think for rugby to really kind of follow in the footsteps of soccer and become more popular here, in addition to providing the exposure, we're going to need to see some success on the pitch too.
Is there a Universal Sports Center type of show?
There is.
There is.
Yes. So it's
I have
called
not seen it.
Podium 360.
Okay.
And we just went to a weekly show with that this year, this month, January. We went. We launched it as a once monthly
Okay.
program.
That's why I never saw it. Yes.
Exactly. And last year we were twice a month, and we've accelerated that now to once a week. And we found that that gives us a chance again to kind of create order out of chaos a little bit with so many sports.
Yes.
to synthesize that, break it down, give people an update on everything that's happening, let them get up to date quickly, and again, it's a good platform for us to expose people to additional sports, to see things that maybe they weren't following before,
Yeah.
and to bring in the casual fans and hopefully evangelize them and to get them fired up to kind of take it to the next level.
How do you integrate between what you do on the web and what you do on TV?
There are some limitations that we have in terms of what we can do on the web. And in an ideal world, there would be no distinction really between the web and television, and we would try to reach as broad of an audience as we can. We're not able to do what we would like to do for a lot of reasons, but we try to use the web now as a platform to allow passionate fans to take a deeper dive into events. And
something like the Ironman coverage.
Absolutely.
The live coverage for Ironman is a perfect example of
Most
that.
definitely.
Yeah.
And then we're also very proud of the fact that we've been in the vanguard of the TV Everywhere movement, so allowing people to who subscribe to Universal Sports Network to watch the network anywhere, outside of the home on their tablet or phone, so that they're not tied to the television set in the living room. So, and we leverage that off of the web. So we use the website, as I said, to allow kind of the deep dives, allow people to explore, and then we also use the internet to allow that TV Everywhere access.
What do you see as the biggest challenges moving forward for Universal?
The biggest challenges for us, I think, are also some of our strengths, which is probably a good situation to be in. And covering so many different sports, there's a lot of noise sometimes, I think. So creating harmony with all of those different sports, so that we're creating something that that works well together.
Yes.
And finding space for all of it with broadcasting windows.
Yes.
There's 24 hours in a day, 7 days in a week, etc. So a lot of events happen at the same time.
Right.
So how do you kind of decide which one you're going with live, which one you show on a same day delay, etc. And just trying to create a programming slate that that speaks to our fans and covers a good mix of things is challenging.
When I watch the ITU racing on TV, that is good television.
Absolutely.
You can go to a commercial and have 30, 40 people off the bike together, rather than the long-distance triathlon. Really needs the human interest stories, because sometimes the racing, some person's up the road by 10 minutes.
Right.
Do you look at it the same way that ITU-style racing has legs?
I think so. I think we're big fans of the ITU series, the World Triathlon series. It's a TV-friendly format.
It really is.
The window is manageable.
Yes, it's just under like an hour 40 to an hour 50 for
so
women.
It fits nicely into a programming slot. So we think that that definitely has legs, and we're a big fan.
Thanks so much for taking time.
Absolutely.
You guys are really, really doing great stuff. I love what Universal is bringing to the table with ITU and what we're seeing from a Paralympic side of things. When I was over in London, the Paralympics actually got huge play on television. Their numbers were actually better than they expected, so they played more Paralympics.
That was a great story.
Yeah, so do you see Universal delving into that with triathlon? Actually, is going to be the Paratri for the first time in 2016. The Paralympics really didn't get a lot of play in the States, television-wise, last time, but obviously the ultimate human interest stories.
Definitely, and that is something that we currently do spend some time with, and when we look to extending it, when endurance sports, obviously, one of our keys. With something like the Boston Marathon, we cover the
wheelchair race,
the wheelchair race, and give it as much
you really do
story as we do with the men's and the women's. So that that's important to us. There's kind of a similar concept. We're supporters of the Warrior Games, which is something that the U.S. Olympic Committee has put together in concert with the Department of Defense.
Right.
Dealing with wounded warriors coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan, and getting them involved in sports. And so it's a Olympic style competition that we're happy to produce and feature on the network. So we're big believers in in open access to all sports, and providing people of all abilities something that they can watch and that they maybe can get inspired to participate in.
Absolutely.
And
off the couch.
exactly. And it's healthy lifestyles for everybody.
Love that. Thank you, Scott. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. Scott Brown has been our guest. Hold on, everyone. We will be right back.